Hey everyone, and welcome back to my Blacadian universe. So, with all the recent backlash against so-called DEI programs, people have, and if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that I work in DEI. I educate people about racism and how to be anti-racist. And, people have been, having conversations with me about, oh, Denise, aren't you afraid of, like losing your job? And of course, like, yeah, job security is a thing. But um, I do this work because it's important work. And now more than ever, it's needed. So let's talk about it. So, everyone, obviously, who's racist thinks that DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a shorthand for saying that, you know, um, you need to hire Black people because to prove that you're not racist. I don't know. Or I guess I should say hiring unqualified Black people because to prove that you're not racist, to show that you're a good person. And a lot of people had to obviously, now that, these cuts and rollbacks have taken place, they understand that DEI didn't benefit Black people exclusively. In fact, the very systemic barriers that it was intending to remove, they still made sure that, they let in as few overqualified Black people as possible. And, it did benefit other groups, particularly white women. So, with, the backlash, thinking that, it was going to be this great reckoning for, frankly, Black people losing their jobs left and right, quite the opposite has been true because, as many people are in the Black community know, is that you have to be triply, doubly, just super overqualified to get um, any kind of, senior corporate position or any position. You need to really know your ins and outs because there have been tons of checks and balances to make sure that you do not get into a position of, power or authority in any kind of role. And so whenever you see a Black person in any kind of senior role, it is not for charity, okay? Let us be very, very clear that DEI was intended to diversify um, positions, roles and jobs that were typically held by one set of people, particularly, most specifically, white men. And with that, it was to benefit business. Having diversity of thought, diversity of ideas really does drive innovation. If you want to do something new, get new people in there, different thoughts and ideas, and, just statistically look it up. I mean, that's not what this is about. This episode is just it's beneficial to business and organizations. So it wasn't a charity operation. They didn't let anybody off the street that had no idea what they were doing into their businesses. It wasn't philanthropic. It was literally about let's try something new to see if we can do better. And overwhelmingly, organizations that did do that did excel. So that's what DEI is about. And so this backlash about, let's make sure that everything's merit based. It's not. It was never merit based. It was based on white supremacy and prejudice and, making sure that, good qualified people didn't get the job unless they looked a certain way. So, with all this backlash that's happening, here in Canada, people have taken a really strong stance, of, frankly, about, proving that we're the good Canadian um, Northerners, even though the whole point of this podcast is that racism is very, very much alive in Canada. It just looks a different way. And one of the ways Canadians have always defined ourselves is that we are not American. And so, there is this sort of leaning into DEI to prove that we're not American, but that is not to say that there aren't organizations that have, breathed a sigh of relief and saying, oh, thank God we don't have to pretend to like the blacks anymore. And, have jumped on the we're not doing DEI anymore bandwagon. So, there's definitely some of that going on here as well. And, so people have been having this conversation with me. Oh, did you see this happening? Did you hear about all these organizations that are rolling this back? Like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think, Denise? And, are you nervous? And I was like, first of all, in this day and age, no job is secure. You have to know that going in. And, I'm very proud to be in the work of anti-racism and, helping people understand our country, especially Canada. I always focus on Canada because, again, Canadians love to basically use America as a scapegoat to sort of deflect about our own very racist history. So, that is what I focus on. And so I got into this line of work, and I talk about it because I started off with it was just about inclusion. And basically, it was around physical barriers. And it was about making things more accessible for people that had physical disabilities, and sort of, making sure that they could access the built environment in a way that made it easy for everyone to access. And so that sort of built onto, thinking about things like, why do we um, build things a certain way when, it could, if we do things a different way, it'll just really be easier for everyone. Sighted people, I think a famous lawyer here in Canada by the name of David Leprofsky. He is has a visual impairment. I think he is legally blind, and so he always talks about how shouting out or calling out the names of a stop on public transit benefits everyone, even sighted people. And he was like, yeah, it didn't cost anything or do anything to have that change happen, but that is considered accessible. And so, you'd be like, yeah, what does it matter to me? I actually find it very handy, even though I, as a sighted person. So when we talk about inclusion in these ways, it applies to other things as well. It's like why don't we try doing something different? You're not going to lose anything from it. In fact, you might find that it benefits everyone. And so that's just, one of the examples that I use in all of my, lectures that I do about just that different way of thinking. And that's really all that DEI is. It's just about being inclusive. And so when I say I do this work, it's because you don't do it because it's easy. It is not easy. It's incredibly draining work. It feels like you're never going to make any headway. You just sometimes you feel stuck when you come up against someone who is just so wrong, but convinced that they're so right. And it's one of the most frustrating things that you'll find, or I have found in this work, is that it's never the people that you expect. These aren't, cross-burning, out loud racists. These are the people that genuinely think that they don't need to, they don't have hate in their heart, that they don't believe in white supremacy, and They are not even looking to grow or change, or, they think that they're already there. And that's where you meet the most opposition, you know, um, and it's the people that feel like they, are doing their best, that this is just the way things need to be. As long as it doesn't impact me, I don't need to change. Those are the days that you really need to dig deep and do your best. And so, just because things are, a little harder now, um, it doesn't mean that I'm going to give up. This is actually um, when I when this work truly does need to be done, I will not give up. I think that people need to hear, my message of anti-hate more now than ever, when, other voices are saying it's okay to, you know, exclude and hate people just because they're different than you. Now more than ever, people need to hear that that is still very, very wrong, and it isn't fashionable, and it isn't a trend, and it isn't charity. It's how to be human, a good human. So I titled this episode, I'm Not Mad, I'm Just Disappointed, because that's generally how I feel. So I think it's sort of like that cliche saying, if you haven't heard it before, it's like that cliche parenting thing that they always, say in the the movies. I don't know, TV, I don't know what. Anyways, it's just a cliche saying of parenting about how, parents will always, the gentle parenting will talk to their child who's done something wrong, and they'll say, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. And, I feel like that's how I feel as a Black woman in this country. As, we as Black women have done a lot of heavy lifting, and, I've talked about it and a couple of episodes, this season. I love that for us, how we're taking a step back. And, we are those parents who are saying, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. So a lot of people think that, Black people stepping away, not really putting our lives on the line to protest, and just, really looking inward is about anger. And it's not. It's about disappointment. It's about, just giving it your all, and then, that little tough love step back. And I think people really want to make it seem like we're being vindictive or whatever the case may be. And it's just, honestly, it's truly, for me, at any rate, just comes from this, it's disappointment. It's just, you know, the definition of being crazy is just, doing the same thing over and over again, or, and then expecting different results. And I think we collectively as a people, which I just, honestly, I do love it, have just said it's enough already, and we're taking a step back. We're disappointed. We were promised that this generation of, white people understood white supremacy. They understood the evils. They understood that we were equals. Um, they understood the harm, the legacy of racism that was done. They wanted to do better, that they were better. They were going to show us, they were going to prove it to us. And we were disappointed. there is such a innate hate of Black people that there was this compulsion to make sure that, you know, we don't get anything. And some people might have to suffer, but as long as Black people don't get anything, they're willing to sacrifice. There's a price that they're willing to pay to make sure that the oppressed stay oppressed. And so that's disappointing. It's disappointing because we spent a lot of energy, we spent a lot of time, we spent a lot of care trying to make people see the light, to sort of come out from this idea that's truly, truly, truly holding people down and holding people back. And I think that, well, I think quite many things. And so I think what it really, really boils down to is that we are used to thriving under these conditions, but a lot of people that are used to having privileges that are now gone from them are not going to fare very well. And so what I love about this new movement for Black people away from being caregivers of the world is that I'm excited to see what's going to come when we pour more of our energy into ourselves, because we are going to do amazing things. And because I am always, always, always optimistic, I'm going to hope, and I do hope, that people will truly understand what we have done for these nations by being so kind and generous with our patience and thoughts and care, despite being hated by so many. And another cliche is, you're going to miss us when we're gone. And I do feel that that's true. And a lot of people are grappling with that new reality of we're not always going to be there to fix things. You've seen the rants of people talking about, oh, like, where's Kamala? Where's this? We're taking a step back. We're taking a step back. And I think I'm proud that we are. So I think it's, again, not mad, just disappointed. And I think that that's something a lot of people are going to have to get used to, is the absence of, and the limited access that you get to Black people um, because of racism. That is another cost of white supremacy that you weren't willing to pay. Not mad, just disappointed. And I think the other version of that is you F around and now you're going to find out. So, um, I think this it's just the two sides of the same coin, but yeah, I think it's about time that Black people step away and really focus on ourselves. And I'm also, again, optimistic to see what comes of that, not just for um, Black people, of course, Black people first. I can't deny it. We are deserving of that. All equity deserving groups are. But I'm also, again, optimistic to see I'm really hoping that white people um, learn from this, and those that are truly liberated from the oppressive ideas of white supremacy can really rise up and take charge and um, save themselves. That is my hope. That is my hope. Always eternally, eternally optimistic. So, as always, thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you next time.